Today's question has to do with the moral argument for God. And the question is simply, if objective morality exists, if there is a true right and wrong, moral absolutes if you want to put it that way, then how does that indicate that God actually exists? That's the core question, and that is the argument of the moral argument, which is one of the four major arguments for the existence of God. Now, C.S. Lewis addresses this argument, just for your information, in the beginning of Mere Christianity. Dr. Frank Beckwith and I, in our book on relativism, Feet Firmly Planted in Midair, we deal with this at the end of our book, so there's a couple of characterizations of that that are available to you. I also did a solid ground on the issue in two parts, and the first part really spends a lot of time cashing out this notion, and the solid ground is called God, Evolution, and Morality, I think is the title. So those are all places you can go to, but let me give you a quick sketch. First thing that I need to clarify is what I mean by objective morality, and this is really critical because people get this confused all the time. When we say that morality is objective, we mean that moral qualities are characteristics of the behaviors themselves. So if rape is wrong, it's because there's something about rape that's wrong, the object, if you will. In this case, the object is an action. And it's not something about the one who's perceiving the object or the subject. Rape isn't wrong because I believe it's wrong. It's not wrong because my culture says it's wrong. It's not wrong because my genes have tricked me into believing it's wrong because of evolution. If rape is objectively wrong, then it is wrong in itself, irrespective of anything anybody else thinks. The whole world could think it's right for whatever reason, yet if rape is objectively wrong, it would still be wrong regardless of what people think. That's what I mean when I say objective morality. It's like grass is green. Well, when I say grass is green, that statement is true if the grass actually is green, not because I see it or I believe it or anything like that, or because we've defined it as a culture that way. Now, whether or not there are objective morals, that's a different debate, but this question is presuming there's objective morality. So if there is, how does that prove that God exists? Again, I want to emphasize, I'm talking about objective morality, morality for its own sake, if you will, the morality of the action, not any subjective relativistic morality that individuals or cultures make up or evolution causes you to believe. It's not about anything about the subject. If rape is wrong, how does that demonstrate that God exists? And it's not just rape, it's a whole host of things, all the things people end up complaining about when they raise the problem of evil. Okay, so let me give an illustration to step into this. How do you know a good bowler from a bad bowler? How do you know a good bowler from a bad bowler? So here we have our terms good and bad. Notice we're not using them in a moral sense, but we're using them as a way of measuring something, okay? The way you know a good bowler from a bad bowler is a score. That is, there has to be a system of scorekeeping for you to make sense of whether a bowler is doing a good job or a bad job, and that's true in all sports, okay? Now, what this teaches us is the words good and bad, however they happen to be used, are words that depend on some scoring system. Lewis said a good portrait is good by comparing it to the original. So you make a portrait of Mr. Koukl. Is that a good one or not? Let's look at his face and see if the portrait matches up. So whenever you have the words good or bad, you have to have some kind of standard to measure the good or bad of this other thing. Now, we are talking about good and bad morally, all right? We are talking about how certain actions or behaviors or thoughts or whatever happen to be good or bad in themselves. Well, how do you know when anything is good or bad? You have to have a scoring system. If somebody has broken the rules, there has to be a set of rules to be broken. So whenever you say that something is objectively good or bad, you are implicitly indicating that they have either conformed to a set of rules, good score, or they have broken something in those rules, bad score. This is what makes our language about morality coherent, that we have some understanding of what good and bad means attached to a reference point. Okay, so here's the question, and here's where I'm going to cash this out. Given that we are talking about transcendent objective morality, not just personal opinions, but transcendent morality, in order to say that something is transcendently right or wrong, good or bad, you must have a transcendent scoring system. If you don't have a transcendent scoring system, then it makes no sense to say something is good or bad. All you're doing is just reporting personal autobiography. The key question then is, where did the scoring system come from? Now, in this case, evolution is not going to help you, and it's the place that most people jump to. Oh, evolution can give us that because morality has a survival benefit, but that's not going to work here. And the reason is all evolution can do is make you believe something. If it can do that, even. It can make you believe that rape is wrong. It can't make a rape wrong in the objective sense. Just like it can't make kindness a virtue. It might trick us into believing kindness is a virtue so we can get our genes into the next generation, but it can't make kindness virtuous. Something else does that. If kindness is a virtue, if rape is wrong, and a whole host of other rights and wrongs, there's got to be a system that is above everything that's not dependent on evolution. Evolution can only give you subjectivistic, relativistic morality. That's it. But if we're talking about objective morality, there's got to be an objective system of scoring that comes from a transcendent source that is the appropriate authority for establishing the rules for everybody else. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that gets you pretty close to God, the kind of God we're talking about in the Bible and other monotheistic religions. I'm not going to narrow it down anymore with this argument, but I think what we can do is, given the fact of objective morality, if it is a fact, and it seems to me it is, because the problem of evil is a fact, and you can only have a problem of evil with objective morality, then given the fact of objective morality, then we have to find some way of grounding it, making sense of it. That has to be a scoring system of some sort. It's got to be a transcendent scoring system. And the nature of morality is obligation. We have an obligation to someone to obey the system, someone who's an appropriate authority. That's the moral argument. And I think it's a good one, because the alternative is there is no authority, which means there is no scoring system, which means there is no morality, which means there is no problem of evil, not objective evil. There are just people who are annoyed at things they don't like. But why should anyone care if there is no moral obligation to even care about those things? So that's how the moral argument works.